Well, welcome back to the Driven Leadership Podcast, everybody. We are so excited to have you back. We're getting the ball rolling here. And this is a strategic episode to have on the first 5 episodes of the podcast, because we've talked about now the attributes of leadership in general, and that was a 30,000 foot view conversation. We talked about the history of Driven. We've talked about our own worst leadership moments. And so now I want to get really, really practical. I want to be ground floor today, because with leadership in what we do at Driven, I think we've found that the biggest hesitation people have is, well, how am I supposed to invest in leadership when I have all this other stuff going on? It's just not top of mind. It's not my top priority. So I want to really dig into that mindset and specifically talk about ROI on leadership, the big daddy ROI. So I'm really excited for this one. I know, Eric, you have a lot of thoughts on ROI. This is kind of your juice. This is what keeps you up at night.
That high economic.
Yeah.
It's got to have a return.
So do you guys think there's any terms that we need to define before we get into this topic? I'm pretty sure everybody knows what ROI means. Ready out of interest.
Return on investment.
Return on investment. That is right. It is
Ready
return
out of interest.
That's all. Connor, that was my definition. That's what I've been going on this whole time. So I'm really confused. I prepared on that.
Red Otters in.
What is it supposed to be now?
It's return on investment.
Return on
Rally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rally on it.
What?
Rally on leadership.
Here at Driven Leadership, we define ROI as ready
Rally.
otters in it.
We're going to edit this, right? This has got to go.
Yeah, at this point, it may just be somebody's like, no, genuinely, what? Like, what is ROI? Yeah, so leadership is an investment. Development is an investment. What's the return that people get practically in a business when they invest in leadership development for their teams? Let's get into it.
I have a quote that someone said years ago, and it stuck with me, and I hear this all the time.
Okay.
What happens if I invest in my people and they leave? What happens if you don't invest in your people and they stay? And I think about the ROI in that, a lot of times it is we don't have the budget. We don't have the time. And sometimes the fear, and I see this, is that I have these people, and if I invest, such as Bold or something else, what happens if they outgrow me? The law of the lid. And sometimes that happens. But on the flip side, what if you don't and they stay? What happens if you don't give those leaders the tools and the skills to help them level up and they become part of the quiet quitters or the actively disengaged, and it actually does more damage to your company?
So do y'all see, you guys have been doing driven leadership development for so long. Is that even a trend that you guys see, or is that one of those kind of like false fears that happens so little at the time that it's not even, worth thinking about?
You're saying that they develop them and they actually quit?
Yeah, and they say like, "Oh, I don't want to be here anymore."
Your barometer is a culture, right? So if you're going to develop them and they're going to start going, man, I want to take this to new places. I have ideas. I want to push it. And it's a very autocratic culture or a non-changing culture or one that's really focused on not doing anything new, pushing the limits, growing, developing, they'll quit for sure.
Yeah.
So it depends what type of culture. Usually people don't send people to leadership development training unless they are a culture that they want their people to grow and develop.
Yeah.
But it's usually when we engage with a company, that's kind of our litmus test. We're on the back and we're evaluating the leaders and going, is this a company that is growth minded, that really wants to grow, or do they want to say, we want to grow, but we want all our people to grow, but we're not willing at the highest level to do the work?
Yeah.
And those companies, it doesn't work. It really doesn't. If you make radical growth in the people, they're more emotionally intelligent, they're aware, they're more collaborative. they're problem solving, they're creative, they want autonomy, they want to be able to make decisions and responsibility, and they want to take the mantle and do all those things. And then you take a top of the company that is, no, do it my way, I'm shutting it down, all these different things. No, they won't make it. But the majority of companies that send people to leadership training don't function that way.
Yeah, we've had a couple of people who did that, and it was the leadership said, no, I want you to fix my people. And we said, this is not our belief. And they said, no, we'll go to class. We just need this person to go first. And the leader never went to class. The manager came in, and they became that growth-minded, hungry, wanting to, it's the John Maxwell raise the lid of leadership, but the leader was holding them down. And so it no longer fit the culture because that person was doing what the leader wanted them to do, yet they weren't ready for the change because they were holding the mirror back up. And sometimes that does happen, but it goes back into what Eric's saying. It's the culture. So when you invest in your people, why? What do you want? How does the culture support that? And then how do they support them when they grow?
It's like when you light a firecracker and put a bucket on top of it. Like that's never gonna end well. Yeah, you're just pressurizing it, and it's gonna go off sooner or later.
Great visual.
What I see is, in kind of what we're circling around here, you ask what the ROI of leadership is. I think it's important that we go, okay, what is the quantitative ROI on this? And then what is the qualitative ROI on this? Because I believe there's two separate forms, right? When you're talking about culture or morale or those things are all qualitative, but there is a quantitative result that you could bring to where it's hard to track. However, there is that as well. So I'm curious, Eric and Mary, like, do you see more people pull towards quantitative ROI or need that, or is it more qualitative, or does it just depend?
My opinion, it depends. And it's also the state of the business and where they're at, right? If it's a newer, younger company, or a company that's smaller and they're going, we need, sales, or we need growth, or we need these type of things, and they're throwing training at it to hopefully get more sales, which leadership training impacts sales. It does. It absolutely does. But when they're looking for those quantitative results, you can direct things and create specifically outcomes, measurable response. You can do all that by directing it. However, you're also going to create a whole lot of ripple effect throughout the culture and just around. So for example, let's take, we take their highest performer on the sales team, and we send them through a program like Bold, which is leadership training, and go, how does that relate to sales? So they're coming out, they're more purposeful, they're more confident, they connect to people better emotional intelligence, they listen better, they ask better questions. So you start looking at all that, you can measure every single aspect of that, but it does become a little, okay, some of that's a little gray area. Did they actually do it? Did they not, or whatever? But the bottom line is all of those things, when you start doing them better, people send people to sales training, and like new in sales training, they want basic technique.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But advanced sales training gets into all these things. It gets into the underneath stuff. It is.
Just how to deal with humans.
It really is, because sales is the pinnacle of a direct result for being good with human beings, and specific in this context of sales. And so they send them off. We had story after story of people going off, and they come back and they have better close ratios, and they sold these accounts they couldn't close before, and all these things. However, it seems like an indirect path. You're sending them, you want to improve their sales, but you're sending them off to be more emotionally intelligent and aware and better communication. I know you can directly correlate those, but most people, the quantitative, they're going, I want sales technique. That's not our expertise. And so what we do is we hit all the underneath things that impact sales. And even when you have bad technique, you'll still improve in your sales and make it quantitative. Now I move that over to management. Okay, so what are the quantitative? Management is so gray. It's artwork. I mean, a great manager, they're in there and they're taking the culture and the personalities and the history of these people and more and more and more. And they take all that, they wrap it up into a moment, and they're going to influence those people to be able to perform at a better level and to really buy into doing it. And that's art. It is. It's so complex that they're pulling. It's not this do step 1, step 2, step 3. You can have that as a skeletal background, but you've got to be able to pull all these different things. So when you go to as a manager, and what are you measuring? Well, we're measuring engagement. We're measuring whatever that department's output is. We're measuring whether they're voicing their opinions, which is one of the best measurements. When we hold a meeting, we have a problem. Are they going, I go, hey, here's problem A. How do we solve this, everybody? And they all jump in and they've got solutions, and it's a healthy, there's conflict that's going on, but it's healthy conflict and all that. That's a great measuring tool. But is that, is that higher sales? Not necessarily. That's maybe not the measurement. It could be a different measurement that we're using to look at what goes on. It's just, we know when there's a psychologically safe space and they're holding meetings like that, we know Gallup studies, they're producing 200% more than the average company in all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Anyway, I could go on and on about this.
I actually have a story about a company. So to Eric's point, this company sent all of their managers through Bold, actually went in, also worked with them, and they were getting their asses handed to them. Their sales numbers were down, and I asked the general manager, I was asking him, so, what has been the results? Because this had been like a year-long process. And he said, well, we're getting our asses.
To get them to Bold?
Yeah, that they sent all of these different managers to Bold, gone in and worked with the company.
Gotcha.
And he said, financially, we're in the tank. He said, however, we are stronger than we've ever been. The way we communicate, the way we problem solve, the way we can manage conflict, he said, we're better than we've ever been. So sometimes you can't quantitate, like the sales numbers is down, but the overall morale of the company was in a better place than it had ever been, and less turnover.
Yeah, well,
that's huge.
I hate that story though, because that's not the norm. That's not the norm. But
I love the story, but I want to hear what is the norm then? Like, what is the?
No, and now they're up again. But I was saying that this was a time, so it's not like they're still stuck there. They were in that problem solving, and they were weathering through the storms.
What's the ROI on leadership? Well, we're really cohesive as a unit, but we're in the tank.
Yeah, but we can't sell anything.
That is like the perfect example of Mary and Eric's personalities, because Mary's like, this is it, and Eric's like, that happened like a couple of times. It's not practical.
I'm like, well, I'm running a company, and we invested in leadership training, and we did all this stuff. But we can't run our company. That doesn't make any sense. Like, what are you doing? No, what we do, where I go
to be fair, it was the economy.
Yeah, right.
Okay, yeah. It had nothing to do with us.
You might want to start there, but no, I mean, you can do leadership training through COVID, and that doesn't mean, and sales are down and all those things, but our people are more prepared when they come out all day long. Yeah. But if we're working with somebody and what we're doing is not increasing the metrics, the sales, all those type of things, and it's from we've never had that. Like, we've literally never had, we'll go in and all the things are going down, and it has something to do with their leading that's what I want to clarify.
It's the economy.
Yeah.
No, I was thinking about this when you brought this topic up, the ROI on leadership, and it's actually what got me into this kind of business line of work, or whatever you want to call it, in the first place, was actually the opposite. It was being in trainings that didn't produce ROI. I hate to say it, but if I'm taking all the trainings that are out there, a lot of them don't work. And what I mean by work is there's some things that need to be involved in adult learning to really produce an outcome. And they're just not in most training. And so when Mary and I put this business together, we're going, okay, we're going to pull these things together that start to make it work for adult learners. People treat training as adults very much like school was when we were kids. And that does work for some people. There are people that function very well in that environment. I was not one of them. I hated school. I really did. I struggled with it. I wanted to be
I
outside.
love school.
Yeah, shit,
I
that's
loved
her.
it.
She was always a good one for the teacher. But I was the dude that would, I mean, I was always talking. I was always distracting. I was always fidgeting. I was always, you know, I wanted to do something. I wanted to take some action. And schools sit there, they're going to put some ideas and information up. I'm supposed to learn that information. I'm supposed to rehearse it long enough to where it gets into long-term memory so I can spit it back out on a test and hopefully someplace in the future. And there is a percentage of human beings that work really well in that environment, or they've trained themselves to work well in that environment.
Yeah.
But the vast majority, give or take about 75% of us, that's not the environment that really works. The environment that really works is how immersed in the actual learning can you be. But there's a prerequisite to all of this. And that is before someone will learn, especially as an adult, before someone learns something, they have to want to learn it. Mm. And so when we do our training, and I know we talk a lot about Bold on here, but Bold's just one class that we offer, right? When we're doing our online classes, where we're doing our organizational development classes, our first and foremost, not first and foremost, big part of everything that we're doing is we're having fun in there. Yeah. You know, it's like, and so people are in there and they're not like, you know, if we're doing it online, we're not sitting there staring at a screen.
For 2 hours.
Yeah. I 2 days ago, I had a training and it was in Singapore. I was here, it was on Zoom, but they're all in Singapore. And I get on there and I say hi to everybody. Nobody responds. And I'm like, okay, that was awkward. Austin was on there, and so was Mary. And I'm like, I'm like, hi, hey, wanting to connect. Nothing. Like I'm getting crickets, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna be a rough 3 hours. This is painful. And then half of them don't have their camera on, and it was a prerequisite to have your camera on. Well, yeah, all this stuff's going on.
Yeah.
And I'm working it. I'm working hard. I get a few to share and doing all that. We send them off to a Zoom room, and this guy comes back early from the Zoom room and said, man, I said, seems like a lot of people are struggling with sharing kind of their points of view. And he goes, oh, that's a cultural thing. We do not ever talk to the facilitator. That's a rule. You don't do that. I don't know if he meant culturally in Singapore or culturally within the company.
Yeah.
Yet, it doesn't, and that's culturally how they do it, but that type of facilitation does not produce an ROI from my perspective. Mm-hmm. It's because it takes a lot of work. You have to sit there, you have to focus in, you have to take really good notes. It does work for some, but for most, it's how do we get them involved? Yes, through process, through interaction, through how does this apply to work, and actually putting it on and going, okay, where am I seeing this, and what am I going to do different from the action that's taking place?
Yeah.
And so I just don't see, it's getting better, I believe, but a lot of trainings, it's a talking head. It's someone who gets up and it becomes about them instead of about the curriculum and about the people. It becomes less conversational. It becomes much more directive. And it's just kind of and so any type of training like that, I go, I don't know what the ROI is. And I have a bias on it because it doesn't fit me, but it's like, so
were you the kid in class that, like, whenever the teacher was explaining the Pythagorean theorem, you're like, why the hell does this matter? Like, what am I going to use this for? Were you that kid?
Like legit that exact, like on Pythagorean theorem.
Yeah. I taught high school math, so I know how it is. And you just see the glaze set over. And it sounds like what you're talking about with all the other leadership developments out there, people leave the room or they log off the Zoom and they're like, okay, like that was cool, I guess, but what now?
Right.
So how do you make that, and I guess what you're talking about, just making it fun, making it practical to get over that hurdle in these trainings?
So this actually goes along with Dale Cohn theory of experience. And it says that when things are important to you and we read something, we might remember 10% if it's important. 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, 50% if we hear and see. Again, if it's important, there's only a certain amount of percentage. When you do something, when you're involved, when you talk about it, when you share, it can go up to about 70%. When there's that emotion and now you're teaching it, it can go up to about 90%, again, of what's important. So the stickiness of an ROI, we don't want them to just read, hear, or see. It is everything is how does this apply? There's got to be a stickiness, and it's not just, oh, that was great information. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
I think it's the mindset when it comes to training or coaching that I'm not transferring information. And if that's the main part of anything that's being done is here's the information, good luck. Like it's dead. It's not ever going to bring in ROI. I mean, how many books do you have on your shelf that you've cracked open, you read years ago, and you can maybe remember 2 or 3 sentences of a 500 page book? It's really challenging. And so that's actually, not to toot your own, I guess, our own horn, but that's what drew me to Driven Trainings before, because I had been in training after training after training after training, years of leadership training experience, and nothing impacted me the way that Bold did. That is a selfish plug at this point, but but I say that like so honestly, because as I was doing it, it wasn't, hey, you need to have emotional courage. It's really important, Austin. So go out and do it. It was, here's a situation, good luck. And how am I going to show up? How am I going to reply? How am I going to respond? Yeah. Am I going to do it well? Is everyone staring at me? All of those things that we experience, 100%. For me, created life change. And now, I mean, we're a year plus after, and I vividly remember moments that I can anchor into and or have impacted still the way I conversate, communicate, lead, function. So
the investment's still returning.
To Dawson's point, it is so the ROI on training, any type of training, is to get someone to have either more information or skills or whatever it is to do something different, right? When the moment is applied. There's 2 ways to change behavior. One is through massive repetition, and the other is through deep emotional impact. Our goal is to include both. So you go through something like Bold, it's deep emotional impact. Just like Austin's saying, you're dropped into situations. You got to think on your feet. You get to see your strengths and weaknesses. They're showing up. And it's pretty hard not to get ROI in Bold. Like you'd have to really work at it to not get it.
To not get it,
right? I mean, because
to leave the same person,
you're in these really challenging spots, and then you get to really look at, what do I, and you're getting feedback, and all these things are happening. So unless you come in there and you go, I'm just not going to get anything out of this. And then, by the way, if you're doing that, we're going to notice and we're going to ask you to leave, because that's not what that thing's about. Yeah. So but at the end of the day, go back to your question, ROI. It is, number one, do I want to change? And some people will show up to training. They're not like, I'm not sure if I want to change around this topic. I don't know what I'm doing. Half the people show up, 90% of the people show up at the Bold are like, I don't even know what I'm getting into. Yeah. Then as we're facilitating, the goal of the facilitation is to start diving into not only what's the ROI, what's the value of this, but you see it right away. It's kind of hard to miss. It's like a truck that hits you while you're in there. It's like, holy smokes, I'm good at this. I'm really bad at that. And it starts to show up. And then the question becomes, I love the emotional courage statement. It's like, do I have whatever it takes to go learn this? Because when we're talking about leadership, we're talking about personal behaviors, how I influence others. So it could be something as simple as, do I make eye contact? But in a lot of cases, it comes down to my emotional depth, my emotional intelligence, my really, truly, am I listening, or am I focused on me and what my self-perception is? Am I caught up in being worried what everybody thinks of me as I speak? I mean, there's all these things. There's all these things that are going on in our head. And that's Bold. You're digging into those, because those are the things that really impact influence. You want to run a great meeting? Great. Go to Toastmasters, learn great skill. But you really want to run a great meeting? Have the emotional intelligence and awareness to ask the right question at the right time, to bring people into it, to connect. And you have one manager that shifts from being slightly autocratic to being much more democratic in their leadership style and start bringing people in. you will dramatically increase or decrease your turnover, and you will dramatically unlock your team's creativity, their potential, and how they step in. What is that worth in a business? Going back to Austin's question of what can we measure, right? What's quantitative? And you start going, yes, can you measure turnover? Sure, you can. But you're going to see all these gray area topics that are showing up. Man, there's more energy. They're excited when they come to work. They're more positive. Our clients are engaging different. They're solving problems, and I don't even have to point out where the problems are. And so can you measure it? Sure. But sometimes it's hard to get your hands around all of those.
Just out of curiosity, does the methodology and like approach of training, what you're talking about, does that differ outside of Bold? Because Bold is very unique and like we talk about all the time, but you fly into this place, you're in a strange environment. There's an expectation that things are going to be different. But when we talk about organizational development training, where we go to businesses or we run trainings over Zoom, people are in the same environment. They probably have an expectation of like, okay, great, another, professional development class today, another day wasted. Does the methodology and approach change whenever you're coming into those situations to train leadership?
It's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
So Bold,
it has to be.
Yeah, you're immersed. Our athletic sports teams, it's kind of indifferent. So we usually work a day and a half. We get massive results with our sports teams and direct ROI. Every single one of the teams we worked with, their rankings have changed. And I always go opposite. They've gone down, right? We have national champions. We have, teams that never were even ranked to winning crazy seasons. Go into companies, we still do whatever we can to make it sticky. We do anything that we can to create fun, to create emotion, so that it's not just the skill, it's not just information, because the information is what you're talking about. We're bombarded with it. And if there's not something that makes it come to life, that's like, here we go again. So everything that we do, even in our Zoom or online, there's accountability, there's repetition, there's action, there's things to create a stickiness. But at the end of the day, it's up to the individual. Do they want to change? Do they want to do the work? Do they have a culture of accountability that is helping? Because the more you have that, the more you have a team that is working together, that is helping, you will get even more stickiness with the ROI.
Yeah, I'll leave their name out of it, but we've got, so our largest clients, multi-billion-dollar client, they're international, and we do a ton of work with them. And great company. When I go in to train an organizational development training, that's where we go in. We've got their team in one location, and we're showing up, and we do process, and we get them involved, and we're doing all the things that Mary's talking about. But when I go in there, often their perception of training in their organization is one that training is painful. Training is flat. I might get one thing out of this. That's kind of what they're coming in with. They're checking the box. I was told to be at a training. I'm going to be here, and they're going through it. And not knocking. I'm not knocking it. They got great other trainers too. But that's the standard or the majority of trainings that they visit. They have that kind of response, and so it's a different technique that we use, but it's the same thing that we're going for. Is that the first thing to do is open up to, hey, there's something here to learn, and this might be cool to do. And so when we start those off, we're usually in process. They're actually quite a bit of fun. We're laughing quite a bit as we go through them. And it's about, we're connecting, they're involved, their ideas are being heard. No matter what the person's title is, it's in there. And within about 15 to 30 minutes, it flips. And they start to go, wait a minute, something's different here. And as soon as we get that, we shed all this preconceived notion of this is going to be pure hell. And then they're going through it, and then they're in it, and then we're moving. And if it's a 6-hour training, 8-hour training, they're like, oh my gosh, is this already over? Is what a lot of them are thinking. And we get to the end, we hear it all the time. We're walking, they're like, this was so good. Now, whether they're measuring this is so good against whether or not I wasn't bored out of my mind or whether I'm actually going to be able to apply that is, they got to go do it.
Yeah.
But the reality is, my personal belief is if somebody is bored out of their mind, they're not interested in the curriculum for whatever reason, they've decided before they get there, this doesn't apply to me, or I don't care, or wherever they are. And then they come in, and then I'm going to stand up there. And even if I'm a decent speaker, but I'm just lecturing the entire time, there's no input coming from the audience. They're just supposed to be there and take notes. The only one that gets something out of that are the ones that were already interested. Everybody else tunes it out, checks the box, sits there, and goes through the motions.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. What I keep hearing kind of as a repetitious thing is
we're better than everybody else, and everybody should come to
yes.
driven training.
I have a very unbiased view there.
No, it's that training is for one result, and so to measure ROI on training is pretty simple. It's just behavior change. Did behaviors change? I mean, there's a lot of ways to quantify that and measure that and see that.
After that, yeah.
But whether you're, and I guess just tying this all into wherever anyone is in their journey, whether you're a training manager or training director, or you're in a mid-level management role, or you're running an organization, if you want to measure training, whether leadership training or operational training, your effectiveness is based upon how much you affect behavior. And there's a lot of ways to do that. But I think just wrapping that up and going, behavior change is the goal. So,
well, and just clarification, in our world, behavior change is the goal. If we're teaching them how to work in Excel, okay, then it's still behavioral change, but it's academic at that portion. It's like, I can now build a spreadsheet and do it effectively around this topic. That is a direct here. Where we're working with people is you've got to be able to abstractly pull 30 different points of data and context together and crush it in this moment so that I influence the group to move and to do something different, or influence the sale to be better and to move in the direction we need it to. That's a lot. That's what we're talking about there.
Yeah. So I have two big questions here, and these may be the last, but they may take a while to get through. The question that I keep coming back to, because as we always do these podcasts, I'm like trying to sit in the chair of a business owner, that whole mindset. And I keep coming back to the question of like, how am I supposed to know that I need leadership training before it's too late? Like, how do you, if your sales, if everything's kind of flatline, sales, marketing, leadership, all that stuff, what's the encouragement to business owners or leaders where it's like, hey, this has to be a focus for you? How do you handle those kind of conversations where people are like, oh no, we don't need it. And now it's like, okay, well, now we desperately need leadership training.
Well, I had a mentor way back in the day, and he used to say this all the time, and it doesn't apply to leadership training at all, but I think about it in the world of and I apply it in this way.
Yeah.
And he said, how do you know when a person needs encouragement? They're breathing. How do you know when a business needs leadership development training? It's running. There's no point in my experience in every organization I've run, been a part of, been very low on the totem pole or running the whole organization. There's no point that ever it wasn't valuable, wasn't needed. And I would say, is it too late? It's never too late to start, but today's the day.
There are people that if they don't want to learn and grow, they're not going to learn and grow.
Yeah.
We can, and to Austin's point, we can always have the ability to learn and grow. And usually what people do is they're raising the white flag when it's like, oh my gosh, I'm in, there's so much fire right now, I need help. It's like we go to the doctor when we're sick instead of doing checkups when we're not, and just how do we stay? I love when people have this growth and hunger mindset, but a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. And when you find companies and business owners that are curious, that are hungry, sometimes they're just looking at, listening to podcasts or reading a book. Those are amazing people to go after, to go to that next level, because they're searching.
Yeah.
It's the people that are like, I'm content. I'm good. I don't need you. Okay. Well, you know what? When you develop your people, they're the ones that will leave because you've capped the lid.
Yeah.
So I agree with everything that was just said, and I'm gonna come at it, I think, a little different angle. Is when is the most ideal time? When do you need leadership training the most? Okay,
Yeah.
Because I agree where they're saying, like, it has an impact all over the place because it's these kind of base level skills that grow into anything. Yet, if I'm in a business that's not making money and we're struggling, probably not the time to invest in leadership training because you need to figure out how to make some money. It needs to be an investment that you can reap the rewards over time in most cases. If you need an immediate response and result, then there's either a system issue, there is a marketing issue, like there's other issues that are playing through, right?
Yeah.
And that's why, they're talking about potentially we're heading into some type of economic downturn. Heard that for a while. And there's going to be companies, and we've been in business long enough and seen it. There's going to be companies that thrive in that time. There's going to be companies that struggle in that time. If you're having trouble making payroll, I'm going to suggest to you, don't start going after leadership training at that moment. Okay.
Hey, hold on a second. I thought this was to get leads. Are we editing that part out? I thought we were editing this out.
No, I'm going to stitch it together. If you're struggling with leads, now is the time for leadership.
Well,
Because I'm just hearing him. I'm going like, oh man, I'm out.
But there's things that you can do. So yes, grow yourself, but it's not dropping $10, $50, $100,000, right?
Hold on.
I'm sorry, Eric. I'm sorry. I had to do it.
I have a point here. No, okay. Yes. Great. Drive leads. I just got to shoot straight with people. I'm like, and I will tell them if we get on a sales call and they're like, we can't make payroll. Now's not the time.
Yeah.
Well,
here's some books to go read.
Well, I know there's some that maybe there are, but what I would say,
and to that point, if people need a kick in the ass,
okay,
then
fair.
sometimes they're their worst enemy and they need leadership training to get their head over their ass so they actually take action, let go of control, and think different thoughts.
Yeah.
So it's an and. I'm just saying there's an and.
I just think it's a little
Or
I don't think it's being authentic to say for leadership training to get on and go, hey, we're the best and you need leadership training all the time and here's all the reasons all the time you do. I don't think that's real. I think there is a time and a place. So going to when,
Yes.
when is it most ideal is you've actually got a company that's growing. And you're going, okay, we're growing, but there is a gap in our organization to be able to move into. And I see it all the time. I see these companies that are growing, they're having success, they're moving, and then they're developing people. That person was an installer and now they're running a department. That's great, but that's not, we don't promote them because they know how to do the job and they happen to be available. We promote them because they have the attributes and the skills required to be a manager of people. That is a radically different job than an installer or a salesperson or whatever. So when companies grow, Gallup did a study and I found it to be very true. Without training, 1 in 10 people is a natural manager. They just have it. They've got the ability, the emotional intelligence, the ability to connect with others, I can go through all that again, but it's like they have all that, or at least enough of it to do pretty well at it. Mm-hmm. With training, Gallup feels that another 30% can get there. So 40% is kind of where they go. 60% of the population should never be a manager. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what you're looking for and you're scaling and you're promoting people into it, some of those people you need to train because there's this 30% group in there. You teach them leadership and you're going to radically influence your company. There's another portion of people that were promoted into there, and it needs to be evaluated as to whether or not they potentially could be better in another role. Like you may have put someone in a spot, and then you got some that are just going to naturally take off, and then you're sharpening the sword and making them even better. But if you feel you're fill your company with that 40% potential and you train them and you work with them, you're going to scale so much easier. You're going to grow, you're going to have results, or even if you're flatline and you're looking for a shift, great time to be in there. Yeah. If we're in decline, we're struggling, that might be a good time to, as Mary said, do leadership training for the very top of the company. They need a mind shift. They need something like that. Brilliant. Okay.
So what you're saying is if you're swimming in cash, give us a call.
Sure.
I don't want to take away from the point because it is a very, And
I also say too that especially the top of a company, when you look at the culture and if you're frustrated with your culture and maybe you're not getting the results and you start blame, you have to look at yourself. You need to, and not just when, people don't like the word training, learning, developing, look within starts at the top and then get clear on your vision, your values, your mission, having the right roles, the right people, then you can go down. But with people, and especially going into the economic downturn that people are saying, really looking at where's the gap? Where's the gap? And that's where you look at the ROI, because in that gap, when it fits with your vision and you can measure it and you work on that, and it's not just a skill, it really is the behavioral shift that helps people take action so they think different thoughts, so they take different action, so they get different results.
Yeah.
And I freaking challenge all these people who say, I don't have time.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
We make time for vacation. We do. We make time for all this other stuff. And yet high level people so many times are like, they don't make time for themselves. And I call bullshit on that. And those are the people, you can take 3 days off. You can. Yeah. You do it all the time. It's an excuse.
Yeah. I don't want to go in back to go forwards, but I do want to say I don't disagree with you, Eric, at all.
You
just
disagree.
Kidding. Caveat, preface, this is not for leads. This is just to talk about leadership. But to that point, even to what Mary said, like just tying those two thoughts together, whether you have a whole lot of cash or you have zero cash, you can be doing something. And it doesn't mean come work with us. It doesn't mean, but it means something. Pick a book and read it as a management team. Do something. That's $100. Just do it. Because the dividends, you may not get a massive return if you're reading a book together and you don't know how to facilitate it well and it's not sticky, but at least it's something and you're moving in that direction. So when times do get better and you can invest, your people are primed and
if times get worse and sales go down, then you have something for at least your team to cling to and like to point back to. It definitely seems like, and from what I've seen, it's almost when a business is in that flatline stage, that's almost the prime time to inject some kind of development in, because that means at some point you've worked your ass off to get somewhere. Sales are fine. Marketing is fine. Your team is fine, but there's always that next kind of ledge to get to and that next level to get to. So that's awesome. The last thing I have and the last question I have for the very practical people out there, we've kind of danced around it and we've kind of said what to look at when looking for ROI in leadership. If someone came to us tomorrow and said, "Hey, we want to do leadership development," and we say, "Great, awesome, let's do it. You have so much cash. Let's do it." What would be the advice to a business owner to say, "Okay, hey, let's go ahead, go back to your team, put these metrics in place so that you can have the confidence to measure the training that your team's about to go into"? What would be some of those metrics if they don't have them in place already to look for?
Yeah. So I hate to give it depends answer, but a little bit of it depends. Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, what do they think the business needs? Okay. Where are the gaps? So let's say it's a business that has some high turnover in their culture. Well, then we're going to look at turnover, and the conversation's going to be about turnover. But really where we measure that was we go, who are the people that we want to keep? Who are the high performers? And that's where we're going to see the impact as you start to develop them, and you develop them towards a healthy culture, and one where management's good at connecting with people and all the things, right? There's good leadership in place, healthy culture, healthy people will stay. You might even see an increase in turnover if you've got a bunch of unhealthy people. Because as the culture becomes healthy, the unhealthy won't stay.
Yeah,
So,
that's the quote, right?
yeah.
What happens if we train them and they leave? Well, what happens if you don't and they stay? They're unhealthy.
Yeah. And so really what we're talking about when it's going after turnover or in any way disengaged, dissatisfied, high quality workers, that's the magic. You get somebody amazing in your company and it goes, how do we unlock their potential even more? If leadership's doing that well, then we're crushing it. We're doing a lot of things right. And you're going to hire and attract and keep more people like that.
Yeah.
You know, you get somebody great. It's not as much connected. Yes, you need to pay them well and you need to do those things. But those great people can go anywhere. It's, are they connected to, and are they part of something bigger than themselves and rolling into it? So going back to tangible measurement, turnover is one. It's an easy one. Sales are actually one. You can get there. Efficiencies, actually getting in a net profit in the business. We're looking at how to make it more efficient. Now, I would say it needs to couple with some type of structural system when you're going after efficiencies in the business. So hopefully you've got a director of operations or something like that that's really focused on making the efficiency of the business there. So systems are flowing, because you get all these people that are, you know, the people side's going well and they're leading well, but then all the systems are jacked. You're not gonna make it more efficient. So it's so anyway, but Gallup does some crazy work on this stuff and actually measures when you improve the engagement of the organization, which leadership will directly impact engagement. That's why we measure engagement typically. Is Gallup's work shows, and it gives all these things. You have less sick days, less people get injured. That's a crazy one, right?
Really?
Yeah. So people are just more focused, more attentive, more caring with each other, and they actually show injuries go down.
Out.
Right.
Yeah.
So they got less sick days. They got less injuries. They got turnover goes in the right direction. Turnover we want goes in the right direction. Some turnover we want to continue to happen. Job satisfaction, sure. And overall creativity, ideas, which gets harder to measure. Things are done more efficiently. So you got a project, it's got a due date. You have a much higher percentage chance of hitting that project deadline. And when you're not hitting the project deadline, the communication happens quicker and we're able to adjust faster. And so even if we don't hit it, we're getting closer to the deadline we're looking for. So, and there's many others. There really are. A lot of times it depends what companies going, here's what'll happen. We start talking to a company and they're like, man, we need help with our overall culture. If that's where the conversation starts, then I'll ask them, I'll go, so what are you seeing? What's happening? Why are we talking? Like there's some type of pain point that's taking place. And often the answers that I get are not, they don't know would be a better answer than the ones they give me. Because they'll say things like, we need better teamwork. Or,
I just feel like
communication's bad or whatever. Okay.
Or we need conflict training.
Yeah. But why and what's going on? Right. Yeah. So when you push them on it, it's going to come down to what keeps you up at night. So the owner, if it's a smaller company, the owner of the company or the leader of a department or the executive team, they're going home and they can't solve some issues with people and culture that are keeping them up at night, that are stressing them out, that are inhibiting results in some form of the company. And those become heavy leadership issues. So, and it almost always comes down to that. It's like, man, I got a department here that's going sideways and I really like the leader, but I don't know what to do with them and blah, blah, blah. Can you just train them? And sure, we can just train them, but more than likely isn't going to fix the whole, because it's a systemic issue in most cases. That leader, why are they still there? Or if they are still there, what has enabled them to be in the spot? Why were they put in the spot in the position in the first place? Why weren't they developed to the level and so on and so forth? So a long-winded answer on that, but it is, you want to get into real measurement, what is your biggest issue and get a real answer, not teamwork,
Fluffy.
communication. And that's actually why we invented we do the 360. We do an organizational 360 where we interview the people that are doing the work and we get all this feedback.
Yeah.
And the reason that was created is because we want to get the real reason what's going on instead of what the perceived reason from leadership is, or the not educated guess of going, that's why they're reaching out in the first place.
Yeah. That's
There
huge.
was a study done by Stanford, and they found that the number one concern for CEOs was how to manage conflict. And what Eric's talking about is they want to know how to manage conflict, but why are they having the conflict? What's underneath? Because we can throw ideas on skill training and give them skills, but if you don't fix the root, the cause, then you're still going to have conflict.
Yeah. You could say that if you start developing people, there could almost be a increase in conflict because now people are being really authentic and being really transparent, and that doesn't always rub the right way. So that's
Well, and you want healthy conflict. Yeah.
Another great reason to join Driven. Hey guys, if you have a whole lot of cash and you want to fight all the time, come on to our leadership trainings. We're so excited you're here.
We just want this episode's not going to air.
Well,
I don't know if it should at this point.
Connor,
Don't put him in class. Don't spend money if you don't have it.
Connor, if the culture is one that avoids conflict, they will have more conflict. It'll be healthy conflict, okay? It'll be stuff that starts to drive solutions, and also people actually care about each other while they're having it. Or if it's a culture that has a lot of conflict, but they're not as caring, they usually drive back. It's this middle ground. It's like they're going to drive back to, we're still going to have conflict, but we're actually going to care about the human being while it's going on. Conflict is this, it is so important how a culture does conflict. And it's so telling when you start to, occasionally we get in there and they'll say, hey, come in and sit in our management meeting. I just want to get some feedback on how we're running it. And it usually is a conversation afterwards about how the culture handles conflict.
Yeah.
And a culture that avoids conflict, generally speaking, they've got a whole bunch of people there that have issues that they never dealt with. And they got people still working in jobs that aren't good at their jobs, and people that are really good at conflict have healthy people leaving because they don't want to be talked to that way or misrepresented. So it matters on both sides.
Yeah, I think I'm going to add on our podcast board here, how to do conflict.
Oh, that'll be a fun one.
That's awesome thoughts.
Bring Ralph Kilman in.
Oh, yeah. There'll be a whole lot of depth and breadth in that.
Dude
knows
his
really
stuff.
good. He does. So deep. No, shout out to Ralph though, for real. He's a great guy. I will say this, simply put, if you're working on measuring leadership training and leadership attributes, and you're struggling with how to measure that, start with commitments. One of the things that we do in every single one of our trainings and every single place, and it's not that complicated to do, it's measure what people are committed to. Are you getting your commitments done? Are you not getting your commitments done? Simple way to start today. Doesn't have to be this complex thing where you're doing, while it's super beneficial to measure engagement and turnover, and those are hard to find at times. And if you're in a smaller business or a super large company or mid-level manager, just start by holding your people accountable to the commitments they make to themselves. Notice the trends on those things. And as you do that, partnered with some good training, results are inevitable if people are doing what they're committed to doing more often than not.
Well said. That's really well said.
I do want to add something in regards to ROI on training. So a lot of times we work with companies. Yes, they go through bold. We start doing things, and they get excited, and then they want to send everyone. You do not want to develop every single person at that level. There has to be a plan. They have to be ready, and they have to be open and wanted. Because a lot of times companies, they get into this growth, fun mindset, and they're changing and they're taking massive action, and they think every single person needs to do it. And some people are not wired or ready. So you can actually create more of a silo and divide. So being very, very clear, having a plan, and making sure that is aligned.
Yeah, that intentionality behind the plan, not just like willy-nilly throwing training at people. I've definitely seen that create a negative effect in business and get no ROI because, to your point, you're sending the wrong people. So that's great.
Yeah, I would say for engagement, just in general, I think people struggle to contextualize that. And I would say in every business I've ever worked in, except for one, which is a software company, we always did a cultural survey. I even did it when I was teaching with my students of like, I want, getting the feedback back from your team of where they are at with culture stuff and make it really practical. Like, don't make it all fill in the blank, like make it a 1 through 10 scale, and do that before you start training, during training, after training. And that's a really easy way, even if it's like in Google Forms. Obviously we have the 360s that are a really deep dive, but just to have those sporadically throughout the year, I've always seen like just gives us a really good, like a really clear view for what the underlying culture is on the team across all departments, across everybody at every level. And it just kind of gives that clarity and focus for the leadership at the top. Of like, oh, well, we thought we needed to focus on this thing, but all the surveys came back and we got 2s and 1s and 3s. So it made me actually pivot to this other type of training instead of what we perceived the problem to be. Well, hey, we're right at the hour mark. Any other thoughts? I know.
It goes quick.
It goes so fast.
That's so fast. Hopefully it was fast for the person listening to this.
Yeah, they listened at 2x speed to get through it.
Yeah, don't spend your money.
Yeah. Don't send your whole team. Make sure you're making lots of money. Yeah, we gave all the reasons not to invest in leadership. Thank you.
Yep. And we're going to stir the pot, and it's going to be great for you.
You're going to have more conflict. It's awesome.
This episode is not going to go out.
If that sounds interesting to you, call Driven Leadership today.
Oh my gosh.
Well, this has been great. I think it's given us, like all these episodes we're doing at the top here, we have a full idea board already, but we're just going even deeper because I think we need to really dive into to conflict and chat about that one because I think we all got some good experience on conflict. Well, I appreciate you guys being here with me again today. This was a lot of fun, and thanks for everybody for listening. We want to hear stories about your life. Please send them in, email us, text us, whatever way you can get it to us. I'll send you my address. Send me a letter in the mail. We want to hear your leadership stories, your problems, your experiences,
Your
because
conflict.
we have a lot of opinions, right or wrong. We'll rip you apart. Well, now people aren't going to say it. No,
And then we'll put you
rip
back
apart.
together.
That's right.
No one's ever working with us again.
Again, you're really selling this, Connor.
We're out.
So, this has been the last episode of the Driven Leadership Podcast.
Wrap this sucker up.
We'll see you in a couple weeks, everybody. Thanks for listening. Share it with your friends, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.